Okie dokie. Here we are, Spill Your Guts podcast. I was really waiting on that one. I was trying really hard not to sing along.
Why do I always
how I get
laugh coming into this?
I think don't know.
You were dancing.
I'm a slave to the rhythm. What up, boo?
I miss you.
I miss you. Rachel Prairie, everyone. Welcome
Mandi
to
Lee.
Mandi Lee. Gosh dang it. She figured out my middle name, everyone. If you've listened to our last couple episodes, I was trying to be a woman of mystery, and she found it out. That's right. You heard it here first. My middle name is Lee, L-E-E, like the bread. Mandi Lee. So do with that information what you will.
Rachel Dawn, like the sun.
Oh, see? Oh, it's like that. Jesse, what's your middle name?
Shane.
Oh, of course it's Shane.
Why of
something
course?
Respectable? Something I can't make fun of you for. It couldn't be like, I really want to say Dwayne for some reason.
Usually someone's like, oh, is it James?
Oh, well, that's weak.
Jesse James? Yeah.
Okay. No, slap that person.
That'd be a lot of people to slap.
Sassy today. I like it. I like the energy. All right, welcome back. Spill Your Guts podcast. What episode number is this, Jesse?
This is going to be 5.
What?
Yeah.
Episode 5, Rachel Dawn. How do you feel about that?
Hey, I didn't know if we would ever even get to the intro. So thank you, Jesse.
Yay! Yay! Absolutely. Well, if you've been with us so far on our 4 previous episodes, you have been on quite a journey.
Sorry.
We basically just show up and talk about whatever we're passionate about this week or that week. And so far, we've covered a lot of territory. We've covered some topics about spiritual awakenings and the meaning of success. Last week, we got real fired up about body positivity. And we're still going to be excited to hear some feedback on that topic. I think that's a bigger conversation. Mm-hmm. But this week, I'm fired up. I'm ready to talk to you about some things. I got something on my mind, and I feel like it's meant for the podcast. Which, by the way, I think everybody will appreciate that. Like, for the past 2-3 months at least, our answer to everything via text is put it on the podcast. So not only are we going to get merch made that says what was the thing I said? Reluctant pilgrims, and now put it on the podcast. It's going to be our hashtags.
Put that in the notes.
Put that in the notes. Put it on the podcast. Reluctant pilgrims. We are here to serve you. You are our people. No, I want to talk about, and like I said, we'll come back to that body positivity conversation at some point. But this week, I've had some interesting thoughts about adult friendships and relationships. And believe it or not, it goes hand in hand with everything we've already talked about. Even body positivity in a weird way. Because it's all intertwined. Everything's woven together. Our confidence, our shame, our healing, our stuff we need to work on, seasons of life. It all kind of is connected anyways. So I want to know. I was just sharing with you guys before we started the recording that I feel like the things that we seem to be going through each week that we're sharing together, a lot of our listeners are also experiencing.
Yes,
so
it's resonating hard.
Right? You are our people, if you're out there. But I was thinking to myself, I've been experiencing some shifts in my relationships and friendships and even like family stuff and weird things. I think a lot of that has contributed to the struggle that I've been having over the summer and all the things I've shared. It's kind of a layer of that. So I want to talk about it. I want to get into it.
It's like, I feel like it's the next step, or it's a part of whatever, like this spiritual journey that we're on is kind of like this excavating or like cleansing. Because once we start kind of understanding a little bit more about our actual wants and needs and who we are, like once we get that inside right, then it seems like the stuff on the outside, the relationships, careers, family, like now we can start addressing some of that. Does it align with where we're at?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, and that's, you just said it right there. Like if the first, if the first step is, admitting and acknowledging, and then the next step is moving into inventory, right? This is one of those things that falls in line. And even last week talking about like feeling comfortable in our body and our skin. And I mean, and that's the outward representation of our inventory. The first thing is like our body.
Yep.
And then what else is beyond that? Our relationships, our jobs, our experiences, our seasons. And so I thought it was interesting. I was sharing with you the other night, and anybody who's been friends with me for a while will know this, but I refer to this phenomenon as the Harry Potter stairs. And I can feel it coming, and I feel like I'm in it right now. But you know that scene in Harry Potter? I think it's like the first one because that's the only movie I've ever watched. Oh my gosh. Harry Potter people don't come for me. I always fall asleep. I'm so sorry. But at Hogwarts, how they like climb the stairs and they just like randomly shift and you have to like hold on and then they get like placed on another, level. I feel like periodically that's what happens to me in my life socially.
Yes.
Is the Harry Potter stairs begin to shift and I realize that like my season with like a certain person or certain groups of people has like drawn to an end and I'm being like shifted to another area. And I, being the reluctant pilgrim that I am, and also a Cancer and also an Enneagram 2 and also all of the other things that I could label myself as that some people out there would appreciate, I hate it. I am the most nostalgic person, and in parentheses would say people pleaser, probably need some help, but I have the hardest time like letting go and I sort of hang on to a fault.
It's that good girl programming, right?
Tell me more about that. I wanted to get you there and I'm kicking you off the ledge. Share with me what that means to you, Rachel Dawn.
It is a very, I call it, I don't know if it's like a real actual saying, but I call it good girl programming because it is something so ingrained in me. I'm not sure where it came from. I'm sure if I went back to childhood somewhere, that's where it would come from. I think, you know what? Actually, now that I say this out loud, I think it came from some of the stuff that we talked about at the retreat that when I was younger, I was weird. I didn't really have any friends. Like I was an only child. I spent a lot of time alone or with animals or outside by myself. Right or wrong, maybe that is healthy. I don't know. But as I got older, I had a lot of trouble connecting with other people or like other kids my age. And as a result, I got really, really good at blending in, at being observing, listening, mirroring, and doing and saying and being exactly like the people that I was
chameleoning.
Around. Yes.
Okay.
And I wrote this down actually a few weeks ago when I was journaling, like, is being a chameleon, like when people say, oh, I'm a chameleon, I can get along with anyone. But like, is that really a good thing? Like, is that a good quality? Maybe in like a work setting. But at the end of the day, doesn't it mean we're really like not showing up as our authentic selves? Like we have the ability to blend in instead of stand out, right?
I think, well, that's huge. First off, I think there's a difference between adapting to your surroundings and who you like might have to work with or be around. Like adapting is one thing, but camouflaging is another.
Yeah.
And like, what's the difference and how do you catch yourself? It goes back to confidence, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at all of our themes coming together.
It's almost like we planned it, except we didn't.
But I think that's where some of this good girl programming started, especially when I was in an all-girls school environment, middle school, high school, and even into college, where I didn't want anyone to feel, I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I would do things, say things that I didn't agree with or that made me uncomfortable for the comfort of somebody else. And I had somebody kind of call me out a few weeks ago because I use this phrase a lot, even as a 40-year-old person. Everyone's my best friend, like they're my best friend. And this person was like, do you really have that many best friends? Like my best friends are like, I got like maybe 2, maybe. And it sounds like you have hundreds. And it just stopped me in my tracks for a minute because I was like, holy shit, this is that good girl programming, like wanting everyone to feel seen, heard, understood. We're friends. I'm there for you. But like if something actually happened, I feel like there's maybe 5 people, maybe less, or if I called them up, I was like, hey, this awful thing happened, like that would even pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And so in the last couple weeks, I've had this like want to like detox and cleanse and like unfriend, unfollow, ghost, and stop upholding these relationships that aren't really relationships.
Yes.
They're just like...
And we've talked about this going ahead of this episode, and I was sharing with you, I was feeling the exact same way. I was calling it social fatigue.
Yes.
And then you hit me with the good girl programming, and I was like, mind blown, because of course. And to take that even a step further, after you shared that with me, and I was thinking about like the origin of what that meant. Because not just like in a family of origin situation, or like who you were in your friend group, or like you said, like growing up, you were alone a lot. So it became a way for you to adapt, right? For me, it was a little different because I was technically the oldest of 7 growing up.
Yeah.
Like when you consider like all the marriages, remarriages, divorces, all the things in my family, like there's a lot going on. I was the oldest one. I would say that as I've sort of like done my work and dug into the origin of that for me, it was, I was the oldest. In hindsight, I think that there was, some like abandonment issues and things that went on. And so I really developed fawning, quote unquote, as a way to react and respond to that. And I didn't even know that word or that like language until recently. But because you hear a lot about fight or flight.
Yeah.
But I really was not familiar with fawning as a response. And I was like, oh, wow, that's what I do. Or did.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I thought it was so interesting because a lot of that behavior can just get sort of dismissed as being a people pleaser. And people don't really have respect for people pleasers unless you like are one. Like,
yeah.
People pleasers like will take that label on and just be like, when the truth is that, and tell me if you resonate with this at all, in leadership especially, if you are someone who struggles with a fawning response, or as you say, a good girl programming, it is much easier to get taken advantage of in a leadership role because you can sort of get away with toxic behavior in that situation, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So like as a leader in the various roles I've held, right, in church culture and in fitness or whatever, there becomes a demand on your performance, right? Your availability. Like you are expected to always be on, to always be considering your tone and your response to people, making people feel a certain way, making sure, like you just said, making sure people feel seen, heard, understood, safe in a room. That became my responsibility for everyone, even though nobody told me that was my responsibility. And it was me who took that on almost to a fault every time.
Yep.
And as I heal and as I sort of go more and more inward and care more about the way I feel and am seen and heard and valued in a room versus everyone else first, I'm abandoning that. And I'm realizing a lot of people in my life don't like it.
Oh my God. I got called hostile last week.
No.
I've never been called that. Because I think we're talking about the same thing, good girl, because I'm a fawner too, but I didn't even know that label or how to name that until a few years ago because of social media, right? Because all the,
me too.
I didn't even know it was a choice of a response.
I'm so sorry I interrupted you, but I even just on the fawning thing, I just really had to digest that for a long time because in leadership, you are celebrated. for being the most available, the least selfish, the absolute most like, boundaryless person around for the quote unquote sake of the mission.
Yes.
And then there's all kinds of resentment that gets thrown at you because of that. And at the end of the day, it's like abusive to yourself.
Oh my gosh.
The standard is like never satisfied. And then there's an expectation because there's no boundaries. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, I didn't mean I'm getting passionate over here, and I'm also very caffeinated, so pardon me.
No, I'm happy we're talking about this because fawning, I didn't know what love bombing was. I'm a love bomber because I thought
explain that for maybe somebody who doesn't know. Or even fawning, like, I guess I didn't define that either.
For me, this is my definition of it, is a choose me response. It goes to that, like, we're best friends. We're best friends. We're best friends.
Yeah.
Where you fawn and you fall. It's almost like you kneel at the feet of these people and like put them up on a pedestal to make them feel special and all this. And in reality, like that's all, or I should say was all real to me. Like my ability, I used to pride myself in my ability to give and show love, like give it away. No boundaries.
Yes.
Listen, I do not recommend.
No
boundaries. But again, I was praised for it. People liked me for it. I had a lot of friends for it. I feel like I probably elevated in my career because of my ability to really and truly like show up just full, like overflowing full of love. But then when I wouldn't get it back, or if it got taken advantage of.
It starts to take its toll, right? Because when you're in it, when you're really, truly in it, it feels right. It feels like this is my purpose. Like I am here to serve. This is bigger than me.
Yes,
but
it's purpose.
That cannot last very long.
No.
And I don't know about you, but almost every single time I end up in that scenario in my life, whether it's in a work setting or even in my family or different friendships, I always end up sort of putting myself in that, my unhealed self, right? Like now I'm aware, so I'm hoping to make different choices in the future. But in the past, it's like I would find myself in these scenarios where everybody would then rely on me to save the day. And I'd be like, yes, I'm reliable, I'm dependable, I'm the ride or die. And then I do that, and then they hate my guts for it. And I did not realize that I was the one creating that over and over and over again out of my own, like, unhealed wounding of, like you said, choose me, choose me, choose me.
Yep.
And now that I'm, like, aware of that, and I realize I have the capacity to choose me, you know, without the fawning and the being of service and showing up for everyone. Like we were talking the other night about just like as grown-ups in our 40s, we're allowed to just not have relationships anymore with no explanation. We're allowed to walk away and just be like, this doesn't work for me. And that's super uncomfortable because it's like, well, as this uber responsible person, I'm like, well, shouldn't I, you know, ask for a conversation and give like some kind of exit interview or something?
It's real though, because suddenly, right? Like when we stand in like this new, whatever this is, like this new power. And I was telling you, like I was mad because I had a couple things happen in the last week where I had a moment where you and I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but we call it, do you mean what you say? So like you declare something to the world, to yourself, maybe to a couple friends that you want to manifest in your life, and you stand your ground, and then the universe swoops in and says, do you mean what you say? And presents you with people, situations, scenarios to test you.
Yeah, to like practice this like download you just received.
Yeah, you said you wanted to stand in your power and not fawn and not and have boundaries and not love bomb. Well, here's a bunch of people that you shouldn't be fucking with anymore that I'm going to suddenly plant back into your life where you now have to prove it. And I think that's kind of like where you and I got really fired up this week, because it happened.
No new friends, no new friends, no new friends, no. Shout out, Drake. Not the crickets. Damn
At
it.
one point in my life, I was going to marry Drake.
We have permission to say his name. I've talked to legal.
You can say whoever you want, but
Oh man, it's
shoot
tough.
for the stars.
Listen, it's true though. No new friends. Drake was onto something. Drake's probably in his feelings too. He gets made fun of, but it's because he's probably a freaking people pleaser as well.
For sure.
Finds himself in these situations.
Probably not anymore, but
Well,
I'll get out again.
Well, it really stinks because, like I said, as a very nostalgic person, I'm like in my heart, I'm a deep, poet in my heart, and I just have the hardest time because it's like when you know that something's come to an end with someone. And you're like grieving and you're kind of going through the process of like accepting that like that moment in time is over and like the relationship will not ever be what it was. And sometimes like over for good, right? Like sometimes there's like a permanent intentional line drawn. And I have such a hard time with that because I like grieve forever, I feel like.
Yes.
And I was just thinking about, a situation as I was driving over here and kind of thinking about what we were going to talk about today and stuff. And I just thought it's so interesting because what I'm grieving, the person or people I'm grieving literally don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
They're still alive. God bless them wherever they are. But like, I know that like the person that's sitting here talking to you today is not the same person that I was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I've evolved and changed into a million versions, I feel like. So like the people that I'm actually grieving and missing like really don't exist anywhere else but in my mind. So like, why am I a glutton for punishment? Do you know what I mean?
I do the same thing. I have the longest grieving period. And I know we're going to end up talking about shame today. And I start gaslighting myself and feeling bad about it. Like, why can't you let this person go? Why can't you let this thing go? Like, what is wrong with you?
Well, I have a thought about that. We kind of started to talk about that and we were like, put it on the podcast. Save it for the podcast. I think that living in 2022 in the age of social media, where we are constantly digitally available to everyone, is doing us this huge disservice because we're constantly grieving relationships that we can't ever permanently let go of.
Yeah.
Like, imagine like 20 years ago when there was like no real social media or anything like we understand it now. You would simply go through seasons of your life where you were accountable to maybe 50 to maybe 200 people, depending on who you are and what you're doing. But like daily accountable, maybe to your family you live with, people you work with, through that season. And let's say that season comes to an end and you move on and you go into this next season of your life. And here we are now in these lives where we are accountable for everything we say, do, post, look at, and talk about on social media. And we are accountable to thousands of people who have known us in these different versions of ourselves. And we're trying to like accommodate all of that everywhere at all times. And it's not natural. Like, I really believe in like the cyclical, seasonal concept of like life. Like the earth has seasons, nature has seasons, we go through. And it's like, here I am still because I still have people like on my Facebook from like 15 years ago that I'm worried about like not wanting to get in an argument with. And it's like, well, what the hell?
Yeah, they don't
What
know
does that
you.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
But then if you go through and you filter everyone out, it can be is that unhealthy? Because like we talked about this before, is that an echo chamber? Are then we only curating our online experience to like echo back what we think in this moment? I don't know.
I know. I go back and forth, and I put this out last week. I am desperately trying to scale my social way down to people like that I actually know, like literally a couple hundred people lock everything on private and just share to the people that I actually want around or like that I know if I did call would pick up the phone. And first of all, Meta or whoever is running is like, it is damn near impossible. You literally have to go account by account. Like they don't make it easy to disconnect. I want people in my life. I don't have capacity. Like I don't have time.
Social fatigue.
Yes. I'm putting energy into stuff and people that that aren't the phone call people and that don't matter. Mm-hmm. And that takes away from the people that actually do, that I want to spend more time with, that I want to engage with, that I want to share my life with. And so all that noise, it has to go. Like socially, in person, wherever, I'm drawing a hard line and it is painful, but it's necessary.
Do you think that maybe recognizing your chameleoning is a way of recognizing what relationships are real and not? Yes.
It's and that's another thing where here comes the shame around it, because I'm like, man, how did I show up for this person? Did I just mirror them to make them feel comfortable and do whatever we needed to do? Or was I actually real? And so that's kind of a definition that I'm using. If I showed up as myself, they can stay. If I showed up as somebody else to like appease them.
Or like the obligatory version of yourself.
Yeah. Then they got to go, because honestly, they don't even know me then. They don't know me. They don't know my true self. Like I said, we talked about this too, about like kind of loving every version of yourself. I can't remember if I sent it to you. So I'm a Pisces and I cry sometimes.
I love it. I know it. I know about that soft underbelly, Rachel Dawn.
I'm really tough, but I do cry. I cry a lot more now that I'm 40, but at things that are beautiful, not so much sadness.
No, you just rage. You just rage at everything else.
Yeah, everything else gets rage. But like if I see like sweetness or love, like animals and like old people have my heart. Like I literally cried the last time I was at the airport. I cried because I saw a little grandpa go get a sandwich, cut it, and share it with his little grandma partner. Aww. And they had matching hats. I know, right?
Gosh dang it. Mike Holden, you better get a matching hat situation.
But I saw this and see, this is where social can be a great tool too. But like I saw this video of this little grandpa talking about how he had been married for 70 years and like what was his secret to success. And it was that he has loved every version of his wife.
Yes, dude, I saw that. Yes.
It was so sweet. And so that's kind of like what I want in my relationships, right? Like if you're going to hang around, if I can't love you in every version, probably not looking good for either of us. Like friendships, like whatever, like romantic relationships, whatever it might be. So I got to clean house, because I have found that, I'm linked to Until Death Collective, which is a community of people just trying to do active things and support each other through life. And that has been like a refresh. So like I'm letting some friends go, but because of that, this is
release to receive.
Some amazing new people where I haven't had to fake it or chameleon or anything. I just get to show up as I am, and they're totally into it. So I think there is something where like there is a capacity issue. I have to like let go of the stuff and the people and things that don't really matter in order for this new stuff to come in. And because I'm so fully committed to not going back.
Yeah.
Like I can't go back. And so a lot of these friendships put me back to old Rachel, and she's not there. She's gone.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I feel, that resonates with me so hard. I feel like part of the hard thing for me, like transitioning, right? Like I've shared on a couple previous episodes about like, my identity crisis, one of many I've been through in the past couple years. But like, I feel like that was part of it. with this last one. It's like, it's not just releasing like a version of yourself that is like no longer needed, right? It's also releasing the people who were a part of that package.
Yeah.
And I drag my feet so hard, and I feel like that's why I experience resistance, because you just said like, I know I got to cut this loose to like get to the next place, you know? And I'm just like, I have this like vision of me just like like hanging onto like the basket of a hot air balloon, just like, dragging my feet, being like, no. And it's like, once I just like knock it off, I can like take off, but it takes me so long to get there. And it's so tough. And I feel like, I don't know if like that just happens with everyone, or is that just a you and me thing? Are we just weird? Like,
I know some people actually, no, like, women too. I was going to say men, but women too, that can just cut. Just goodbye, or they don't even get that invested to start. Like they really audit from the get-go and don't even go into it. Like I that was another thing that I've been like thinking about the last few weeks, is that I emotionally, I'm someone I like, even though it exhausts me, but I like to experience all the emotions, all of them. I like to feel every little thing. That's why I'm crying at the airport with grandma and grandpa's eating a sandwich. Like I like being a deep feeler, mostly because most of my life I didn't. I thought there was something wrong with me, and I didn't embrace it. I was embarrassed by it.
It comes back to true confidence, like radical self-acceptance. Like, this is who I am. I can no longer fight it or deny it. I cannot chameleon anymore. Yes. This is who I am. So I might as well just like balls to the wall, white knuckle it. And I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like we've both experienced this like already, because you're on social, you're basically like, you know, Rachel Prairie. I don't know if you know this, but you're kind of a big deal on the internet. But also, like with me, I've been blogging for like years, and so there's like a element of like exposure that I have out there that can feel really scary sometimes. Like when I share like really raw, kind of intimate things about myself, like in the name of art, I always freak out after I post it, and I'm like, "What am I doing? This is thirsty. I'm and I do this whole spiral, and then I'm finally just like, well, fuck it.
Yeah,
like it's out there. This is who I really am. That's really how I feel." That there it is. And it's just like, I have to just sort of like sit in the discomfort until it goes away. And would you agree that committing to each other to show up in the raw and vulnerable way we have decided to do this podcast is like, do you mean what you say?
100%.
And I feel like that's sort of causing the Harry Potter shifting stairs right now, because we have been showing up and like just telling the truth about how we feel about these things, and it seems kind of scary, but here we are, white knuckling it, and I feel like it's doing a lot of work that I haven't been aware of until
100%.
Does that make sense? What I'm saying? I don't know if I sound confusing, but it's like it's really, really forcing me to filter out like who is going to just like still ride for me when I'm letting my whole raw true self just hang out here in public.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm wanting in this phase, I'm wanting more. I don't think privacy is the right word, or maybe it is privacy, but I'm wanting more like intimacy. And so for me, that means like a smaller, it's like we talk about like the right message for the right group of people at the right time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that this podcast is like bringing the people that resonate with it closer to us. And it actually feels like it a little, like creates a little bit of safety for me.
Yeah.
Because especially like the responses and the questions and the engagement that we get, we have a small audience, but they're with us, like they're saying yes, like loud yes. I understand.
Like, yes, this is what I'm experiencing too, which is super cool. Would
Which is
you?
the other reason why I want to really like scale down and close up my socials, because I want that with the people that I know too.
Yeah.
Like I want that intimacy, and I feel like I've given away love to everyone with no boundaries for so long, and now I just want like this little safe space, like this little utopia with my people.
Yeah, I love that. When you say I want to scale back my socials, what does that mean? Because I know for me, it's been pretty wild. I mean, it's been pretty wild because I went from like posting all the time and being very active on my socials to being like a desert tumbleweed the past couple months. And I think people are just like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, fuck off. But I don't know if I've done the best job. It just really ran. So what does that mean for you? And like, help a girl out.
For me, it's removing followers, unfollowing people, but also posting whatever the fuck I want.
Yes,
Like
there it is.
I have found myself, and I don't even know why, because it's not like my page is not a professional page. It's like a personal page. It's a collection of things that I love and care about, which is also like part of my career too, is something that I love. But like sometimes I just want to like post a meme or like a cat, like a video of a cat. And I don't. And that makes no sense, because I'm not trying to do or be or sell anything other than myself. And so I also am finding that like now when I'm out in the world, like I even think the last couple weeks I've been on these incredible adventures, and I've taken like a dozen pictures and a couple videos. Because I'm so because I'm not trying to post or like think of anything. I'm just there to enjoy the experience. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is another thing where I'm like, what was I doing?
Well,
Why
that's
did
what
I care?
Well, because I think that it's part of the concept of quote unquote leadership and I have been so guilty of touting that like about social media to people. Like I've literally like been hired as a consultant to help people in teams like with social media, and I have been like, no, this is the play. This is like how you show up. And I know it works because I've done it, and I've and I know that XYZ works, and it feels uncomfortable having like internally grown past that.
Yeah.
Because I'm no longer operating from like a wounded place of like, look at me, I'm providing value, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I want to be seen and heard and like validated externally. Like the more that is really truly happening on the inside, the less and less I want to participate in this thing out here.
Yeah.
But yet here we are like doing a podcast, and we have to like promote it and get it out into the world. So we have to, like I want to be available to like people who are wanting to have this real conversation. But the audience is getting smaller and smaller because it's no longer just like this broad thing where I'm fawning and trying to write blog posts that are going to just be, accepted everywhere by everyone, or podcast episodes, or you know what I mean? Like the more I just like you just said it, like showing up and not caring about what you're posting or how you're being perceived.
Yeah.
There's such freedom in that seems scary to people who have like who are counting on you to be a version of you they need you to be.
Yes. Because I even think I have employees from now almost 10 years ago still reach out about stuff. And I'm like, if social didn't exist, this wouldn't be happening.
Absolutely not. You would be just some random person. They'd be like, oh, I had this one coworker I knew one time.
Yeah.
And yet now I know like people I went to third grade with, and like how many times they've been married, and like what
Seriously?
they for no reason. Like I don't interact with them. I don't. But yet here we are accountable socially to all these people, and it's a huge burden, I think.
Yeah, it's just another thing that's got to go. Like I said, I just feel like you and I have been like letting go till we kind of joke, but also it's a little alarming. Like what do we have left? And I think as we narrow that, I'm like, what we have left is like the sauce, right?
Yeah,
it's
the
like
fucking the magic.
Yeah, the thing that we're actually trying to get at. So yeah, it's scary to like let things and people go, but the end result is what we're trying to
it's like what we're fighting
achieve.
for. Do you believe, okay, so do you think, and this is kind of just a question I'm throwing out there for everyone, is this a human experience or is this exclusive to those of us who are having the human experience post Panini times, right? Like the evolution of family and relationship. Is it like being impacted this way because of current events that are creating divides and impacting our connection? Or is this just what happens as you grow older and you become more self-aware and you do your work? You know what I mean? Like, is this exclusive to the times we're living in with social media and all the current events that are wild? Or is this part of the human experience?
I would say that the current times, pandemic, the last couple, like 2020, last couple of years has sped it up for me. I don't think I think I would eventually get here, but I think it would have taken longer.
Yeah.
Because everything got so noisy and I was absolutely caught up in the spin of it, like the heavy spin of it between, I'm in Utah now, but between the murder of George Floyd happening down the street from where I live, like there was so much noise and all I wanted to do was like hide out. And as a result, that hiding led me to this because I got quiet and I had a minute to like be actually more than a minute. I had months and months of time literally alone for the first time in my life. It was me and my dog and sometimes Brendan. But there wasn't anything else to do other than start figuring this shit out.
It was kind of like a concentrated effort right there.
Yeah.
I would agree with that too, very much so. It's like it's an accelerated path I feel like we've been on. Plus, I don't know if like even, and this could be like a subject for another podcast episode, but like generationally too, I think that we collectively are all experiencing like a willingness to talk about stuff and like our feelings and patterns and our toxic traits and what's healthy and what's not and what's good for us and what's not in a way that like I know my parents did not. My grandparents certainly did not. Like we are experiencing this kind of conversation and relationship dynamics, I think, for the first time. At least, you know, like generationally, I think that's interesting, and I think that has something to do with it.
Oh yeah, big time. I think there's kind of like a lot of the tension that we feel is kind of, there's like a group that has committed to like, no, we can't go back.
Yeah.
And then there's a group that's like, no, but we have to hang on.
No, the good old days.
Yeah. We have to hang on to this thing. So I'm so interested. You and I talked about before, like our generation, like our age, if you're around age 40, we're kind of like this weird mediator that's like ending a lot of stuff that needed to end, but also still not the leaders in like what's coming next.
Yeah,
so like
it's like a hinge. Yeah.
Yeah, like we gave people younger than us permission to start exploring it, but we didn't really do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Or we're doing it now when we're older.
But they're like blazing the way.
They're starting to do it way younger.
I agree.
It's super. I didn't have hope for a long time. I really didn't. I was just like, fuck humanity. Like we're fucked. Like this is how it is. But I really see that drive, especially with people younger than us, of we cannot go back. We will not go back. And that brings me hope.
Well, that goes back. Yes, girl, preach it. That goes back to that like train, the momentum train thing too. Like what you look for, you will find, right? And so like when you start to get hopeful, then you start to see more things to like get hopeful about. And I like that. Like I know what you're talking about. Like there's been some times, and even still, like if I let myself like, you know, watch the news too long, man, there goes my momentum in the direction I don't want it in. But when you're cognizant of that, and I try to, you know, I want to stay informed. I don't want to be ignorant to stuff going on, but like, you know, I also not at the cost of my momentum and my vibration. You know what I mean? Like I will carefully pay attention when I'm marinating in so that I don't find myself back in like the angry, weird, scared vibes. Like that's not cool. Do you think that then it all comes down to like genuine connection? Like what does that mean? Like if we understand what genuine connection is and we know it's worth fighting for and worth like releasing relationships for that don't have it, even though that's super uncomfortable, what is that then? What does that look like? What does that feel like so that we know it and can like keep chasing after that?
For me, it's the ability anytime I don't trust a feeling or a red flag. Like I'm always right. You know what I mean? It's about gut.
Intuition,
for me, it's about feeling. And energy is a currency, right? So you get back what you give in. So this is actually, and I'm like, for whatever reason, I'm emotional saying this out loud, but I don't know if I have a definition yet because I'm so new to connecting with my real self.
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
And so I think I'll lean back. What's been working is leaning back on feelings. I'm a deep feeler. I can literally walk into a room and not have a conversation with anyone and have a pretty good sense of who they are and what they're about. Which, again, we talked about this earlier. Like, I didn't like that about myself for a long time. I thought it was a curse. So really leaning into that and seeing what happens. But I think my definition is still forming because I'm still that new to this authentic, real
freaking
self.
love you. I love that you shared that. No, seriously, because that's real shit. And you had even said earlier, which I'm so glad you answered that way because it reminded me that I wanted to circle back. You said something earlier about gaslighting yourself. And I think it's so interesting because if it really all comes down to genuine connection and we can't understand what genuine connection is without genuinely connecting with our authentic self, which always comes back to real confidence, then what does that mean, right? What do you mean by gaslighting yourself?
When I didn't even know you could gaslight yourself until I started reading about it, which is also just like part of this, spiritual journey, like this next phase. I feel like I'm very much into like research and reading and like really understanding for me. And maybe it's my trainer brain. Like we know I'm all in on the woo woo, but I still need a little bit of science.
Yes.
To really like,
I feel like that's firm but fair.
To really hit home. So gaslighting is really me trying to not validate what I'm actually feeling or like diminishing it. It's like with that saying, that horrible saying that boomers, my parents included, used to say, like, you got to eat all your food because some child in Africa, wants it. Like that's what gaslighting is, right? In my mind. So I will, instead of feeling what I need to feel without shame and without judgment, I'll gaslight myself and I will literally judge myself and try to say, well, it's not that bad. It could be worse out of the feeling. And I catch myself doing it all the time. And then I get shame around it because I'm like, I'm 40. How am I gaslighting myself? And I always like laugh at this question, but it's kind of weird. But like, if I live in this body, why don't I have control? Like, why don't I have control over my own thoughts? Why am I gaslighting myself? That doesn't make sense.
And not to get too like Eckhart Tolle on you, but like whose voice is that then? The critical voice. If it's talking to you, who's saying it? It ain't you.
Yeah.
Diddle-a-doo, 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 diddle-a-doo.
Oh, you want some of that, don't you?
And this is where we get weird.
So, Mandi, I think this is kind of the perfect point to talk about those Instagram questions.
Yes, actually, we have a perfect a listener question. We've decided that we are going to try to, at the end of every episode, spill our guts with questions that you guys have provided for us. And we have the perfect question. Actually, Rachel, I think you have that one. If you could share that.
So we had 2 different people ask the same question, honestly, of
Which is why we have to answer it.
yes, which is what do you do or what can you do when shame shows up, when shame arises? And for me, I have to label it right away. Like I have to, or in order to address it, or just sit in it and be like, it's okay. I should set up my phone and like record myself during the day for how much I talk to myself out loud.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I talk to myself. I literally be like, it's okay. You can do that. The amount of times a day I say you can do this to myself would blow people's mind.
I love that. The amount of times I call myself bitch during the day would blow people's minds. I'm like, bitch, listen. Just hurry up. So, okay. So how do you identify when you're in shame? And I'm asking that because like you had said, oh, I gaslight myself and I do this and I do that. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, to me, that sounds like a limiting belief. I've also been gaslighting myself, but like I've just been calling it a different thing, which is like, okay, I hold this like belief about myself that I know is limiting and not true. And it's like the same thing, but for me, it's like you just said, it's identifying it. Just using it as an example, not to like, keep beating a dead horse, but like my transition into this new job I had to take, I was having all this shame and struggling with it. And it took me weeks, you guys know, you've been with me, to kind of like finally get below the feelings and figure out where it was coming from. It really had nothing to do with the job or the experience or anything like that. It was just having to release this like feeling that I had failed. And what was underneath that was realizing that I was still doing it, quote unquote, for the wrong reasons. And that was tough to realize because it's like all of my reasons were valiant. And I thought, very selfless and,
I will die on this
and
hill.
honorable. And it's like really underneath all of it was still me vibrating to this belief that I wanted to still be accepted and appear successful to certain people. And it took, I could have learned that lesson probably several times in the past couple of years, but it took that final sort of like thing being taken away from me for me to really get underneath the feeling and like identify it. And then there was freedom.
You ended with my favorite word. I think, I don't know if you've watched, I don't know if you have HBO, but I've been watching Brene Brown's
oh, yeah. Love
special
her.
on there. So I would highly recommend, like, there's plenty of books and TED Talks and stuff of hers, but her series is so good right now. And besides, like, her tips and tools, like, besides naming it, which will help you, like, then
kind of examine it from a
debunk it.
Yeah, kind of like get a bird's eye view on it instead of being down in it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she talks about that shame, one, is an extremely powerful emotion for humans. But if you bottom line it, it's fear that we're not good enough. And that's it. Like if we bottom line what it is, and kind of the remedy is connection. Connection to yourself.
Hey-o, it's almost like we planned it, guys. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Connection to yourself, connecting to the feeling. Again, like if we kind of like speak shame into existence and own it for what it is, then we can let it roll. Like I try to, especially as such an emotional person, I try to think of, I don't hang on to emotions. I try to like let them roll. Yeah. So when I start feeling shame, I consciously think like, just like let it roll, like let it come through.
I love that you said that because one of the first things I learned in my Reiki certification was that the Latin root of the word emotion is movare, and it means to move. And our emotions are genuinely supposed to move us, like navigate us. Like when something feels good and joyful and peaceful, we're supposed to move toward the thing. And when something feels painful and hurtful and stressful, we're supposed to, that's an alarm system built within our ancient body to alert us to move away from it. And we don't. I just looked up the definition of shame.
Ooh, okay.
And I think it's very interesting because it was presented as both a noun and a verb.
Huh.
So the noun definition of shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. And the example is she was hot with shame. And the verb says of a person, action, or situation making or made someone feel ashamed. And the example is, I tried to shame him into giving some away. And I think that's interesting because what you just said was more of the shame verb, like using shame as a tool versus experiencing it as, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so like shame kind of has two roles, two parts.
Yeah, which is why it's so powerful, can feel overwhelming. And as something that I always working on is, Brene also talks where like shame can't exist in an environment or space that has empathy.
Ooh.
What did she say? It cannot serve.
Mama Brene.
I have a little post-it. Shame cannot survive being spoken. It cannot survive empathy. And I struggle with empathy, or I'll gaslight myself. Like I won't express love for myself as much as I would. It's easier for me to do it for other people because of my good girl programming.
There it is, folks. And we just came full circle, bitch. Maybe right there, I'm feeling something. I'm feeling something special about to happen. Maybe that right there is empathy is the indicator between what is shame and what is humility. Because humility is, in my opinion, positive. Humility is a growth feeling. Humility is not great, not fun, but humility is winsome. When you embrace it the right way, when you can admit you're wrong, when you can see your part in a thing, when you can own it, when you can say it out loud, it's winsome. Shame does not provide any of that. I don't feel like shame provides anything useful. So like I was going to ask you, what do you think the difference is between shame and humility? And you answered before I even asked you, because I think it's empathy. Mm-hmm. And if you're not practicing it with yourself, how can you practice it outside of yourself? And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, because we're really good at having empathy for people around us. Mm-hmm. But why can't we give that same empathy to ourselves? Mm-hmm. Because once you do, and you start showing up for yourself, then everybody thinks you're being a bitch and doesn't want to be your friend anymore. Hostile. No new friends. No. All right. Well, I think we've basically solved the world's problems. Sounds about right to me.
I feel better.
I feel great. Well, listen, Spill Your Guts podcast listeners, if you guys have burning questions you want us to spill our guts about, please let us know. Send a raven, send a DM, reach out. We are here. We also want to know your thoughts and feelings about relationships, friendships. Are you experiencing this stuff too? Are we just weird? What's going on? Rachel Dawn, as usual, thank you for sharing your heart with me. And I love you. And Jesse, you're the man.
It's a pleasure being here.
Hey, we'll see you guys next time.